Good morning, everybody. This is Bill Feehley, and I'm here with another edition of MSATP TV. Joining me this morning is Jerry Lotz with Cost Segregation and another venture that he is involved in the energy business. And Jerry's going to tell us a little bit about that. So, Jerry, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then get into your new venture?
Thank you, Bill, Walter, and always a pleasure to be here with the MSATP family. It was great to get out and see everybody live last week at the beach. Good to see some old friends and make some new friends for sure. So this is our going into our 5th year, I believe, as being a corporate sponsor. It's hard to believe,
I
but
know.
it truly is. But I love being out in the community. I love working with tax professionals and their clients. So our mission, or my mission, is really one of education. And I come from a medical sales background. I was born and raised in the Baltimore area. And although I traveled fairly extensively when I was involved with medical sales, I've always lived within 20 minutes of where I am right now. So my wife of coming up on 40 years here in August is also a Baltimore native. We've got 2 older grown daughters, 2 grandchildren. So our roots are thick here.
Uh-huh.
It's a great place to be. And I always had a passion for working for myself, but I swore that I wouldn't do it unless I could find some partners that I felt were best in class. So my company that I formed about 6 years ago, CostSeg Energy Solutions, was really born out of a passion for a couple of things: helping people, and then I always have had a passion.
Did we lose you? Hello?
There are a number of your members that have certainly reached out to me that we've been able to help. Hello?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, sorry. I thought there was an unstable connection. There are a number of members of MSATP that have reached out to me to be able to help them with some clients. So I was just, when I heard about this concept 6 years ago, fascinated that something like that even existed, where you could do take an engineering approach and reclassify the construction components that made up a physical piece of property, whether it's a residential rental, multifamily, or a commercial building. And now with the tax laws, they are so friendly that anybody that's got a piece of residential rental, multifamily, or commercial property, I would strongly suggest to allow us to provide a free estimate on potential tax savings, whether it's newly bought, newly built, even if they've owned it for a number of years. So that passion or interest or intrigue with that whole concept is what brought me to MSATP. And then, as I mentioned, I'd always had an affinity for the energy sector. When I heard of this initiative called Community Solar, it was like, gosh, this really sounds like a no-brainer. I'm sure everybody's experienced somebody knocking on their door and saying, well, we think your house qualifies for solar. There are some government incentives out there. We'd like to talk to you about putting panels on your roof. And when the whole solar craze, for lack of a better way to put it, started over a decade ago, the panels were heavy, they were bulky, it was a cumbersome thing. There were some government incentives available, and there still are, and typical return on investment for somebody putting that on their house or in their business could be a few years. There was oftentimes a large upfront investment to be able to do that. And not everybody had the physical wherewithal or the physical means to be able to afford it. And not a lot of folks were excited about putting these panels on their roof. I, for one, my wife would, I'd get a divorce before she'd put panels on the roof of the house, just because she's that adamant about it. She would, yeah, be fighting tooth and nail. So when I heard of this initiative called Community Solar, I was drawn to it. I figured, I help business owners, and business owners are average everyday people like you and I, Bill. I
Right.
mean, we'll own a business. We may own some properties. We may, operate our business out of a office setting, or like a medical professional would have a dental office and they own the building. So we help them out with their tax savings based on their physical location. And then we can come behind that and say, hey, we've got some initiatives to help you on your personal side, or maybe for some of your employees. And this community solar piece just felt like the right thing to do. I mean, we're only here for a short amount of time on this earth, relatively speaking, and I believe we've got a moral responsibility to environmental stewardship, and this, I thought, was right along those guidelines. So when community solar really got its roots probably a little over a decade ago in Colorado, when the first project was installed. And since then, over 40 states, probably closer to 50 now, have adopted some form of community solar. And that whole community solar sector is producing well over 1.5 gigawatts of energy now. And it's becoming the fastest growing segment in the solar industry. So I'm fortunate to work with a group that's located right here in Maryland, a company called Neighborhood Sun out of Silver Spring. That the principal of Neighborhood Sun has actually been in the industry for a couple of decades and is one of the pioneers in the whole solar industry. So Neighborhood Sun is what they call a certified B corporation. First off, there are only 3,500 or so certified B corporations in the world. And in order to become a certified B corporation, they've got to commit and demonstrate an extra level of commitment to social good, environmental sustainability, transparency. So you know that they're always going to do the right thing. So I guess a little bit about community solar itself. As I mentioned, it's in almost every state, and it really is a state-sponsored program. If you go on the utility companies, whether it's Pepco, BG&E, in the state of Maryland, Potomac Edison, they will have a piece in there about community solar. It was started, basically there are a lot of grants and government incentives out there that are working to incentivize utility companies and solar developers to create an opportunity for the average Joe like you and I to be able to participate and feel good about going green,
Uh,
as opposed to having to spend a ton of money to put panels on our house. This whole community solar initiative, even somebody that rents a condo, doesn't even own the property, can participate. And they can almost can't build enough farms quickly enough to accommodate the need for this. So basically the utility company and a solar farm developer will get together and they'll say, okay, we're going to construct a 12-acre farm in Howard County that will serve the clients in the BGE marketplace. So the whole permitting process, clearing the land, everything involved takes some time. Once they've announced that farm being constructed, then that farm is able to accept waiting list signups. So, for example, I signed up last year in January to be part of a farm in White Marsh, Maryland. So I was subscribed to this farm that was still being built. Now, COVID hindered some of that timeline because, the permitting processes were hauled, some of the construction processes were hauled. So I signed up in January. That farm did not actually go live until November of last year.
Uh-huh.
But basically, that farm supports about 800 or so residences, whether they're single family homes, whether there's renters or whoever. And I subscribe my meter to sponsor some panels on this farm. The panels on this farm produce electricity, feed it to the electric grid. So the more subscribers and the more people that adopt a community solar type of a program or any other type of renewable energy source program, the more renewable energy that's being fed to the electric grid. So all of a sudden, if you've got 10% of the people in a utility adopting renewable sources, then basically 10% of that energy in that grid is coming from renewable sources. The goal is by 2050, 2030 in the state to have 50% of the energy that's being fed to that grid coming from renewable sources, whether that's wind, hydro, or solar. So,
Okay.
and as I mentioned, there are heavy government and state incentives out there to help that to happen. So, this solar community program is allowing us as average everyday consumers that don't want panels on our house to participate in some of those what are called renewable energy credits. So we're excited about participating in these renewable energy credits. The farm produces electricity on our behalf. It may or may not cover 100% of our electric usage. And I'll give you an example. So my electricity spend was $100. My savings by being hooked up to this farm is going to be a 10% savings. So my spend is $100. The farm produces $90 worth of that electricity on my behalf. So the utility company credits me on my utility bill for $90 based on the amount of energy that the farm produces on my behalf. 30 days later, I get an invoice from the Neighborhood Sun Company, not for the $90 that I've used, but I get a 10% savings on there. So they invoice me for $81. So I'm basically saving 10% on my electricity spend. And that's for this year, next year, the following year, and it can last for 20 years.
Uh-huh.
So you look at a 20-year timeline and 10% savings, that's almost 2 years of free electricity through this program. So I was
That's pretty awesome.
excited. It is. I was excited about it. And certainly to bring this to my current clients and, other folks who are interested in this initiative is something I can feel good about. There's no cost for somebody to subscribe. Of course, there's no need to install any panels or any equipment on your home or your condo or apartment or whatever.
Right.
And if for some reason, you had to up and move to a different state, you're not going to get penalized for discontinuing the service. If you move from, say, Severna Park, Maryland to Annapolis, Maryland, or, White Marsh, Maryland, or whatever, you can take your solar subscription with you when you move. Or you can leave it on the residence that it was originally attached to. There's no cost to cancel. And you typically would get anywhere from, I've seen on the low end in some farms in some states, a 5% savings. Maryland typically, like the BGE marketplace, has got a 10% savings. If there are clients, residents that may be of a lower or a moderate income, maybe their household income is less than $66,000 a year, they can actually, in some cases, qualify for a 25% savings on certain farms. So
Okay.
it, to me, it just seemed like a no-brainer and a natural fit with my overall mission to save companies and people money in a number of areas in which they spend money.
Right. So you buy a panel in a solar farm, and then the cost of that panel is what gets added to your electric bill every month. And at the end of X number of years, that panel would be paid off. And then do you see increased savings?
Well, and the way you put it is an interesting way to put it. You're sponsoring a panel or a number of panels in that farm. So
Right.
you're not actually buying a panel, but you're sponsoring a panel, for lack of a better way to put it.
Okay.
And by sponsoring that panel, that panel or two panels, depending on how much electricity you use, is generating energy on your behalf and feeding it to the grid.
Right.
And that panel or those panels that are supporting your usage are actually receiving renewable energy credits from the government and credits from the state, just because of the whole initiative that's out there to green the grid.
Sure.
So you're actually taking part in some of those renewable energy credits that panel is producing on your behalf. So that's where
Okay.
that's where the savings comes in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
if your
Right,
spend
please.
rate is $100 a month,
Right.
and you have a panel in a farm, and it's a 10% return, then your electric bill is reduced by the $10 or the 10% a month, for the electric that panel generated in the farm.
Basically, yeah, because you've sponsored that panel in the farm, you'll get a 10% savings on the electricity that's generated by that panel.
Okay.
Right, right.
How does that tie into your personal utility bill?
So the utility, I get a bill, everybody gets a utility bill, and it's broken out by electricity usage. And it doesn't matter what supplier you're using either. So you could be using BGE as supplier, or Next Energy, or Direct Energy, or Constellation, or whoever. You're
Right.
still using a certain amount of dollars, paying a certain amount of dollars for your electricity spend.
Sure.
And this farm, so when a subscriber signs up for a farm, the neighborhood son would look at the total usage. So say you use 12,000 kilowatts of electricity in a year, roughly
Right.
1,000 kW a month. Then the farm would allocate a certain number of panels that they feel could produce 90% or so of the electricity that you've been using.
Okay.
So, and that's where you're going to get a savings on the electricity that's generated from that farm on your behalf. So it may not necessarily always cover 100% of your usage, but whatever it does cover, you're going to save 10% on that amount.
Okay.
So, and it took me, to be honest with you, 1 or 2 billing cycles to really see how that worked on my electricity spend. But basically, I get a reduction on my BG&E bill, and then I don't have to pay for that reduction. I get a credit on my BG&E bill, and I don't have to pay for that credit until 30 days later.
Uh-huh.
So I get a little bit of extra dating or extra time to pay for that, and then I get a 10% savings on it on top.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's pretty exciting. It's a way to green the grid. Kind of some people get a great feeling about putting cans and bottles in a recycling bin. They feel like they're doing their part.
Right.
Community solar is another way to I guess it's a less proactive way, but it certainly makes a huge, huge, huge environmental impact.
Now, um, how many of these solar farms are there in Maryland currently?
So there are 3, I believe, that are up and running currently. There's a new one that's being constructed in the BGE territory, which is going to be in Howard County. So this will make number 4 that's being constructed in Maryland. And it could be more than that. I'm not 100% sure. I know there's
Right.
one in Western Maryland, an area called Flintstone, another one like in the Hagerstown area. There's one in the Woodlawn area. Actually, there's one in like the Silver Spring, the PG County area too. So, gosh, there's probably closer to 5 or 6 or so in Maryland at this juncture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
So, go ahead.
you're invested in the White Marsh
Yes.
farm.
Yes. My meter subscribed to the White Marsh meter.
Um, if I wanted to get involved in this and I live in Ocean City, could I get a panel in the White Marsh farm
That's a
and
great question.
have those credits applied to my Ocean City electric bill?
That's a great question, Bill. And today there is not a way to do that. You have to live in the jurisdiction in which that solar farm, in which that utility company is.
Okay.
Yeah. But there are, there seems to be always opening up opportunities for farms. And Neighborhood Sun, the company that I represent, is not the only sales agent that does this across the country. So there,
Right.
and sometimes, there. So even though it may be another sales agent that would have the contract with the solar farm developer, the company Neighborhood Sun may come in and say, "Well, we'll help our sister agent somewhere to help them fill up this farm." So
Right.
there's farms opening and closing all the time. We've got farms in, of course, Maryland. There was a farm in New York City, Manhattan area that just recently filled up. There's a couple of farms in New Jersey that were selling, and most of the state of Maine and Rhode Island is now open for signups as well.
Okay. So it's a national project that you're working on.
I'm working on a small part of a national project. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's awesome that you've got a green outlook for what's going on in the world. I would be interested in talking to somebody about doing that when they have a farm down here in my jurisdiction.
Sure.
Because I think it's what you said. It's an environmental issue, and we all need to be good stewards of the environment. And I think it's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about it. The whole community solar initiative is really still in its infancy. There's a lot more room for growth, a lot more education that needs to happen, and that's my job and the jobs of these developers and the utility companies and some of these sales agencies that are out there. There are a number of myths that are still out there, just like with everything else. It's too good to be true. How can it happen?
Right.
What if the electricity goes out? A consumer is not going to get hurt by signing up for a community solar program.
Okay.
Yeah. The
Well,
same
very good.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate you, allowing us to have this conversation about this initiative. It really does fit kind of hand in hand with saving companies money, saving people money.
Right. Well, very good. Thank you for joining us today.
Happy to be here.
And we'll be seeing you at some seminars coming up in the fall.
Looking
And
forward to it.
yeah, we are too. And our members can stop by and talk to you about it and get some more information. And maybe we'll get some more green environmentalists joining you.
There you go. That would be great. Thank
Yep.
you, and happy to help any way I can.
All right. Well, thank you. And have a happy Father's Day. You take care.
Yes, you as well, and all the members too. Thank you.
All right.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.